So we get to 83-84. So for people tuning in, I'm doing every year, every season. And I'm going to do it right up until, probably the season that just passed. Just kind of news and notes from each year. And I'm using the Hockey News annuals to refresh my memory on what happened with some of these teams. So the number one thing that comes out of the 83-84 season is a new miracle worker in Montreal. So we've been talking about Montreal falling off the map, Montreal having some problems. In comes Steve Penny, goaltender extraordinaire. And he goes on a run with the Habs. He comes in out of nowhere, and he takes them to the semifinals. So they beat Boston, they beat Quebec, and then in the semifinals they lose in 6 to the New York Islanders. So not only are they playing well, Steve Penny's playing great, but they challenged the New York Islanders, a team that, of course, up until this season hadn't lost in the playoffs in half a decade. Of course, the Oilers, now that they've won a Stanley Cup, immediately the question becomes, are we looking at an Oilers dynasty? Big difference between then and now. Now we just look and we go, yep, that team's won a Stanley Cup. Good for them. Probably won't win next year because it's really difficult to win back-to-back. Back then it was, so is this the new dynasty? Is this where the Cup's going to be residing for the next 4 or 5 years? And with the Oilers, it definitely would turn out to be a dynasty, and it would start with this year. The Washington Capitals. So as soon as they add Langway, things get better. And not only that, but they're great defense, they're great goaltending. It brings them within 2 points of first place in the division, which was occupied by the New York Islanders. The problem is they lack offense. Mike Gartner's their top scorer with 85 points. Gartner's great, but in a time where it feels like every team has a 100-point scorer, the Capitals are falling behind. So there's still some attempts to maybe beef up the offense a little bit, but they don't want to sacrifice anything on the blue line or in net. Bobby Clark retires and becomes GM because the team is not accomplishing what they need to in the postseason. So Clark decides his body's had enough. He's going to be GM, and he brings in Mike Keenan to be coach for the 84-85 season. But 83-84, not a great season for Philly. And it's the regular season results are there, postseason are not. And it's not acceptable. Pierre Larouche, so for people who watched the Carolina Hurricanes video I did this morning, the history of, Pierre Larouche gets 48 goals for the Rangers because the Whalers gave up on him. The Whalers decided, he's done. That's it. He's finished. And they dump him off to the New York Rangers, and he gets 48 goals that first year with the Rangers. Pierre Larouche is one of those guys, I need to do a video on him at some point because it's bizarre. His totals are fantastic, and yet Montreal dumps him, Hartford dumps him. It's kind of strange because his numbers are pretty solid all around. Draft. Kirk Muller. Kirk Muller's the consolation prize for the New Jersey Devils. So you have New Jersey and Pittsburgh embroiled all season in the tank battle to see who's going to secure 66. Who's going to end up getting Mario? Pittsburgh wins the tank job by making sure the team's as horrible as possible on the ice. I feel bad for anybody trying to coach that, where it's, so are we trying to win or not? Or am I, okay, so that guy's gone. He was a good player. That guy's gone. He was a good player. Mario, the year that he's drafted, gets 133 goals, 282 points in the QMJHL. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that Mario is the next one. All the talk about Dale Hawerchuk being the next Gretzky or another Gretzky or Gretzky Jr., that all dies as soon as Mario joins the NHL because he's Mario Lemieux. And Hawerchuk, while being an excellent player, it's not really on that level, and it's unfair to put him on that level. Tom Barrasso makes his debut as a teenager with the Buffalo Sabres. Unexpected. So Scotty Bowman sits down with him in contract negotiations, and all right, kid, here's all these bonuses. If you come in and you play and you win this amount of games and you get this trophy, yeah, you can collect all the bonuses in all your dreams. And I'm sure Bowman was rolling his eyes going, this kid's not going to get these bonuses. And he does. He does. He gets those hefty bonuses. So Scotty Bowman, this is seen as a misstep by Bowman. But Scotty also drafted Barrasso and gave him all these bonuses that probably spurred Barrasso on. The interesting thing is, right out of the gate, Tom Barrasso was talked about as being cocky, kind of arrogant. And this is something that will follow him throughout his career. So he makes his debut for Buffalo, has a fantastic season. But yeah, it ends up meaning that Bowman has to pay him more money than he'd ever intended to. And Barrasso is right away thrust into a starter's role at 18. So he earns a spot on the team and earns the starting job. Kent Nilsson, Magic Man. His heart's being questioned again. So his point totals come down a little bit. He misses some games, and his heart's being questioned. And Calgary very clearly, while they enjoy the offense, they're not enjoying the stretches in between of not producing points. And there's a new star in town, Al McInnes. McInnes plays 51 games as a rookie, gets 45 points. Not bad for a defenseman. And he steps up in the 1984 playoffs and plays like a veteran. So this kid comes in, plays pretty darn well, and Kent Nilsson's days in Calgary are numbered. So the Flames, a lot of good things going on, and it feels like maybe their superstar Swede is going to be the one that ends up being on his way out. Vancouver. So Roger Nielsen gets fired mid-season. They don't wait very long to get rid of Nielsen, and Harry Neal steps in behind the bench. That's it. We've got to get this together. It doesn't help. So, well, who does he hire? He hires Bill LaForge afterward. Bill LaForge, who in the 1984-85 season will have a very short time as coach, really hotly talked about as he could be the guy to save things. Here's a quote from Bill LaForge. I want the Canucks to be one big happy family, 20 guys believing in one common goal. I believe in PhD, pride, hustle, and desire. So he's kind of the John Cena of coaches, I guess. He's almost got the John Cena-isms, or maybe if you want to look Kurt Angle-isms, but not quite. LaForge doesn't end up leading the Canucks to tremendous success. 20 guys believed in one common goal the following season to move on from Bill LaForge. And it's one of those things that ends up costing Harry Neal his spot in Vancouver. General manager John Ferguson was known as a rather gruff player when he played for the Montreal Canadiens. Now as general manager of the Winnipeg Jets, he wants the team to be bigger and tougher to play against after they get swept by the Edmonton Oilers in the first round. So the Oilers with a big sweep, and it exposes that Winnipeg is nowhere near contender status. They're nowhere near the Edmonton Oilers on any level, and Ferguson wants to fix that by making them bigger. And as these videos go along, we'll see how it works out for them. The LA Kings, I mentioned how dysfunctional things were in yesterday's video. Today, they cleaned house in January of 1984. They missed the playoffs. And the new general manager, Rogie Vachon, so another case of a player who retires and becomes general manager, he trades the number 3 overall pick to the Chicago Blackhawks, Eddie Olczyk. And he gets back goaltender Bob Janicek. There's a question mark there because even now, 30 years later, I look at this trade and go, what? Because he was 27 years old. He'd played 6 games in his career in the National Hockey League. And Vachon trades out the number 3 draft pick for him. It is bewildering, befuddling. And if you're going, who's Bob Janicek? Yeah. He would play for the Kings, but he's nowhere near being worth losing Eddie Olczyk for. That's just not a thing. St. Louis, second in the division despite the turmoil. So, I mentioned they almost moved to Saskatoon. Well, also a lot of players, their contracts run out. And some of them run off to Hartford. Because that's where the owner of the Blues ended up going. And there's definitely a vacuum in St. Louis when it comes to talent. Well, they still finished second in the division. Now it's the Norris, and the Norris division's known as kind of being trashed during the 80s. But despite everything that's happened, Harry Ernest has saved hockey in St. Louis, and the team is better after going through all of this turmoil because things kind of start to settle down. Yzerman makes his debut for the Red Wings. So in and amongst everything that's going on, Yzerman immediately gives the Red Wings that number 1 center they've needed, gives them credibility, and he is the stabilizing force. Jimmy Devellano had predicted that they would win a Stanley Cup by 1990, which everybody kind of chuckled about. As soon as Yzerman makes his debut and things start to take form in Detroit, there's some discussion of, well, maybe they can win a Stanley Cup. Maybe it can actually happen for Detroit, which was unthinkable as soon as 1 year prior to that. The Chicago Blackhawks take a step back, in part because everybody gets injured, or so it seems. A lot of injuries. and that really sinks their season, and so all of the excitement from the year before gets deflated out the year after. And the Toronto Maple Leafs, ending on the Toronto Maple Leafs, horrible season. Absolutely horrible season. So they had a good plus 500 record after Christmas the year before. There was some excitement, and then the year after, it gets beaten down. The bright spot for Toronto, and I remember this, I'm old enough to remember this, is that Alan Bester and Ken Wregget are fantastic. Alan Bester was one of my favorite goaltenders back then, and I know the numbers won't show it. I know that his career totals aren't great, but man, he was really keeping Toronto in games they had no business being in, and it was nice to see two young goaltenders who, despite the fact the team was terrible, everything that was going on in Toronto was just a disaster. They still showed up and played every night. You didn't get the feeling they were mailing it in. So that's good news for Toronto, and overall league-wide, it does belong to the Oilers. But I did the videos last year where we talked about champions and all that, so now we're just discussing the news, which gets into kind of what's going on with every team. So there you go, the 83-84 season. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.